I'm Tom from Do-It-Yourself Home Automation, and I just published an article in debugger.medium.com, one of the publications I write for, talking a little bit about the craziness happening right now with access to the new COVID-19 vaccines. We saw over the weekend that the New York Times reported that the vaccines can actually be up to 100% effective. So some public health officials are saying that the effectiveness had been actually understated originally. So these are really powerful shots, and the Times said that these are probably the best vaccines ever created. So pretty impressive. A lot of hope there, I think, in terms of the pandemic overall. But accessing them in the United States, at least, has been a huge challenge. So one of the things that I talk about in the piece in Debugger is that a lot of counties, because this is really being coordinated at the local county level, really don't have the resources in place from a technological perspective to make appointments, to coordinate people actually registering to receive these vaccines. And the same thing applies to a lot of different health systems that are handing these out to people. There's a lot of requirements that have to be met. There's age requirements in a lot of places, occupation requirements, so people who are in the medical field are getting priority. And it's just a really big logistical challenge for these individual counties to implement. And so what we've seen is that they've turned to this sort of hodgepodge of different technologies to actually implement the distribution of these really life-saving vaccines. And one of the things I share in the piece is that some of them have actually turned to Eventbrite, which is normally a website used to book tickets and concerts and that kind of thing, to dole out vaccine appointments. And specifically, several counties in Florida have actually done this. So why are people using Eventbrite to hand out a public health through a vaccine like this? Basically, they don't have the ability to do it with their own internal systems. A lot of these counties used phone trees originally, but their phone trees actually crashed because so many people were calling. And I have some relatives in Florida. They kind of had this situation. They called all day, literally. They both started robocalling. They called it in the morning, just calling every different public health hotline around Florida, and finally got an appointment after about 8 hours of calling. And they had to drive about 2 hours round trip to get their shots. So it's really a challenge using the phone to do this. And at the same time, a lot of counties that have tried to use their own web systems to coordinate this have found that their sites end up crashing. So in Georgia, we saw this happen. In New York, we saw this happen where the websites from these counties couldn't handle the load of all these people trying to register simultaneously. So they started to crash. So some, again, have turned to Eventbrite. Some counties are actually using Google Forms, Microsoft Forms. My own county here, Contra Costa in California, is using Microsoft Forms to coordinate. And even the ones where their phone trees are working, there were reports that Kaiser Permanente, which is a major health system here in the Bay Area, offered up vaccines, and they had a 17-hour wait at one point in time to reserve your vaccine. So it's really a big challenge, and it raises a lot of privacy issues. With a company that's really designed for handing out concert tickets, or these not necessarily secure platforms being used to handle what's basically health data. So will some of these companies end up using that data to target advertisements? Who knows? It's technically, in a lot of cases, in their privacy policy, they could. Will any of this data end up being breached? Again, we don't know. So it's really sort of this piecemeal approach, and it's creating a lot of challenges. But as crazy it is to hear that a lot of these places are using these kind of tech tools that were originally used for consumer events to hand out a vaccine, in some cases it's the best alternative. So other people have sort of chimed in and said, well, I tried to use an official website created by my local public health department, and it didn't work well for me. It crashed. I wasn't able to get in, and I wish I had used something. They had used something like Eventbrite that at least has the ability to handle the load, can scale, can handle a ton of people refreshing it at the same time. So a lot of trade-offs, a lot of challenges, a lot of access issues. You can explore more. Check out my piece at debugger.medium.com.